Please welcome up at this time the moderator for today's candidate forum, Chris Clasby.
Thanks for the introduction, Greg. Well, welcome everybody to the First Friday Luncheon. Sorry. Mike, okay, got it. Welcome to the First Friday Luncheon and State's Attorney's Debate, the only place you can eat lunch and figure out who's going to best let you out of a speeding ticket for the next 4 years here. I am Chris Clasby, as Greg mentioned. I work at Siemer, Austin, here in town. I'm also a member of the Chamber's Legislative Committee. That is the committee that did put on this event. This event is also sponsored by our media panel over there, the Effingham Daily News, Cromwell Radio Group, Effingham Teutopolis News Report, and the Premier Broadcasting Group. Format of, and if you guys want to hear this debate again, we will be airing it at 9 a.m. on Saturday on 97.9 XFM and 7:30 a.m. Sunday on 1090 WCRA AM. Debate format's pretty simple. We will have some opening bios of each candidate read. Then we will go into a question and answer format. The questions will be asked by our media panel over there. That media panel consists of Meeker from the Effingham Teutopolis News Report, Greg Sapp from Premier Broadcasting Group, Troy Kurtz from the Effingham Daily News, and Justin Ritz from the Cromwell Radio Group.
Chris, I apologize, this is self-serving, but it's going to be on a 9 a.m. Saturday on AJ Country at 102.
Okay, thank you. After the question and answer period, we will have a 2-minute closing statement by each candidate. In regard to the question and answers, these questions were developed by this media group along with the Chamber President, Norma Lansing, although I am told that Norma had the final say on the content, phrasing, and substance of the questions. So the media group has not seen these questions before today. I haven't seen the questions, only Ms. Lansing has seen these questions. The debate rules are as follows. Each candidate will get a minute to respond to each question. So I believe, I can't remember who won the coin toss, but Bryan, okay, Ms. Reimers will go first, followed by Bryan. Ms. Reimers will then have a 30-second rebuttal, and then Bryan will have a 30-second rebuttal. Then we will go to the next candidate, and Mr. Kibler will answer first, and then Ms. Reimers. So please hold your applause until the end so we can get through as many questions as possible. No comments or other things, please, and if you could, remember to turn off your cell phones or put them on vibrate. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce the candidates. Each candidate submitted a bio for us to read, although I believe Ms. Lansing edited them down for time. So our first candidate today is Bryan M. Kibler. Bryan and his wife Jennifer reside in Effingham with their 6-year-old twin daughters, Sydney and Madeline. Jennifer is a high school history teacher. Bryan has practiced law in Effingham since 2005, concentrating on criminal and family law. He's a former Jasper County public defender. His memberships include the Effingham Lions Club, Effingham Sportsman's Club, and the National Rifle Association. Bryan also coaches youth sports for the Effingham Park District and is a member official with the Illinois High School Association. So, Bryan Kibler. Come on in. Thanks. The next candidate on the ballot is Deborah Niebrugge Reimers. Deborah resides in Effingham with her husband, Dick Reimers, and they have 4 children, Scott Mahone, Dr. Stephen Mahone, Stacia Mahone, and Laura Reimers. She is the daughter of Alf and Margaret Niebrugge. She is a member of the Effingham County Chamber of Commerce and a small business owner. Deb has spent 20 years managing multiple departments at both St. Anthony's Memorial Hospital and at Sarah Bush Lincoln Health Systems, and has earned an MBA. She started law school at age 42 and attended Southern Illinois University, driving to Carbondale every day while also working at the Effingham County State's Attorney's Office. She has also worked as the Effingham County Juvenile Attorney. Deb now works for the law group and is a certified mediator in the 4th Judicial Circuit. That's our circuit, in case you didn't know. Current memberships for Deb include New Hope Church, Effingham Sunrise Rotary, and the National Rifle Association as well. She's currently president of the Effingham County Bar Association. She has served on the Family Life Center Board, the Heartland Human Services Board, and is a founding member of CASA, the court-appointed special advocates. So big round of applause for our candidate. With that, we can go ahead and get started. Our first question will come from Herb Meeker.
Yes. Yeah, we have it on.
Hello, check.
Okay.
Thank you, Greg. Okay. The first question is, how do you plan to balance the administrative duties and criminal caseload of the state's attorney's office?
The administrative duties at the state's attorney's office really include, currently they have a staff of approximately 8 people, and they have a budget of about $450,000 right now. The criminal caseload is pretty heavy. However, in my past experience, I have 20 years of administration and management experience before I went to law school. So I've managed hundreds of employees in multi-million-dollar budgets before. I really don't see that the administrative duties in the state's attorney's office are full-time. In fact, they should be part-time. And my intention is to be in the courtroom every single day with a hands-on approach to every aspect of the office. Thank you.
And repeating the question, how do you plan to balance the administrative duties and criminal caseload of the state's attorney's office?
Well, the administrative duties of the state's attorney here in Effingham really aren't that extreme. The budget is about $585,000 out of the primary state's attorney's fund. Well over the majority of that is through salary and benefits that are administered through the clerk's office. Quite frankly, there's very little discretionary money that the state's attorney controls. So really the primary administrative function is to handle the several employees in the office. But as the state's attorney, your primary job is to be in the courtroom every single day. We have a county with a felony caseload every year of approximately 250 felony cases. 2 years ago, we had 10,000 traffic tickets. So your primary job is not really administrative, it's more of a part-time deal. Your primary job is to be in the courtroom every day, keeping this community safe, and that's the primary function of the state's attorney, and that is where most of the emphasis gets placed on. Administration issues are just a minor part of the job.
Deb, any rebuttal?
I would like to add that with the administrative duties in the state's attorney's office, I will be able to evaluate the processes in the office, and I'll be able to make improvements based on what I can evaluate. So as far as administrative duties, I don't take those lightly, and I will be looking at possibly streamlining and making improvements as well as making efficiencies in the office. And I'm the only candidate that has the experience to do that.
Right.
Oh, in terms of a rebuttal?
30 seconds, please.
Oh, yes. I have administrative experience. I've been a small business owner. I am qualified to run this office. I've spent, the last 7-8 years being a small business owner. I have the administrative background necessary to administer this office. But again, your primary function is to be in the courtroom every single day. And I am the candidate who has the most experience practicing criminal law, and that's the primary responsibility. And if elected, I will be in the courtroom every day fighting to make this place better. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Sapp?
Thank you. Our next question was about managing a budget. They both discussed that, so let's move on to the next question. And I think that your first answer, Bryan, this time?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. What is your criminal court experience? That's the question for each of you.
My criminal court experience is that since 2005, when I moved back to Effingham, I've been in the courtroom every day handling criminal cases. I was a former Jasper County public defender. I am the candidate who, quite frankly, has legitimate jury trial experience. I know as of last year when we all announced we were going to run, I'd been the only candidate who's actually done criminal jury trials. I've handled numerous cases from Class X sex abuse cases and drug cases on down to low-level misdemeanors like disorderly conduct. I've had several trials. I've won some, lost some. I've handled everything from DUI criminal trials up to sexual abuse cases. Those are the cases I've done in the past. I feel that I, by far, am the candidate with the most criminal experience. I've been in there every day handling criminal cases for the last, since 2005, and I am ready day one. I don't need any training to be state's attorney. I'm ready from day one to handle the most important duties of the office, which is.
Okay, thank you. Again, the question, what is your criminal court experience, Deb?
Well, I am the only candidate that's also worked as both a prosecutor and as a defense attorney. While I was in law school in 2003 and 2004, I worked at the state's attorney's office and handled all sorts of criminal cases, including the daily call, including Class X, serious criminal sex offenses, DUIs, and alcohol cases. Since 2005, I was sworn in. I've been a criminal defense attorney, and I have served well over 2,000 clients since that time. I've done criminal law and practiced all other sorts of law as well. I don't take that criminal experience lightly, and between us, my opponent is actually splitting hairs a bit, because between us, I think we have less than 6 jury trials altogether. So I've been an attorney since 2005 and have practiced criminal law since that time.
Thanks. Bryan, 30-second rebuttal.
Yes. When Mrs. Reimers says she has prosecutorial experience, what she's really counting is her internship experience from about 8 years ago. That is not real prosecutorial experience. You're an intern. You're not out there actually handling the most serious cases. So it is a bit of an exaggeration that she would say that. With that said, I've at least done jury trials. I know that. Maybe I don't have a million trials under my belt, but I know I've put myself out there, made arguments before juries, tried to persuade them to do what I wanted them to do. I am the most experienced candidate. Thank you.
Ms. Reimers, 30-second.
In 2003 and 2004, I was a paid employee of the state's attorney's office, and I did handle DUI, alcohol cases. I assisted with serious sex offender cases. So I do consider that a lot of experience as both a prosecutor, and again, I've been a defense attorney since 2005. I was actually sworn in 6 months after my opponent, so we really do have just about the same criminal experience.
All right, with that, we will go to Troy Kurtz from the Effingham Daily News. This will be directed to Ms. Reimers.
Will you use the grand jury process instead of going through individual preliminary hearings?
Absolutely. I believe that process is much more efficient. I have served in other counties that don't use the grand jury process, and preliminary hearings are very time-consuming. You have to bring witnesses in every single time you have a preliminary hearing. It's very expensive on the county. So the grand jury process actually compiles all the cases into one time frame. We can call the witnesses in pretty rapidly and have one set of indictments that are all issued at the same time. So it's much more efficient and it's much better for the taxpayers.
I agree with what Ms. Reimers said. The grand jury process has been fantastic for this county, because when you have preliminary hearings, you have to schedule them through a whole month, so you have trouble coordinating when your police officers need to be to court. So one of the added benefits about the grand jury system is that for 2 days every month, all law enforcement knows when they have to show up to the county building to do the grand jury process. So one of the added benefits essentially is we let law enforcement do their job, not worried about when they have to go to court. And then often preliminary hearings, when you go to those other counties, are at the end of the call, so you just have officers sitting around kind of wasting time. So the grand jury process is an efficient way to handle the criminal cases here in Effingham County, and if elected state's attorney, I'm not going to change the grand jury process that's been used the past decade.
Any rebuttal?
I think we're both in agreement on that, so I don't think I need a rebuttal.
Okay. Next question will be by Justin Ritz from Cromwell Radio Group, with Bryan to answer first.
All right, Bryan, almost 24 counties in Illinois have allowed cameras and tape recorders in their courtrooms. How do you feel about the issue for Effingham County?
Well, that's going to be one of the major administrative changes that's going to occur the next 5 to 10 years. What's going on is currently the State Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice Kibler is really pushing the idea of video cameras and audio equipment in the courtroom. And I completely agree with what he's wanting to do. Currently, we're still at like a pilot stage. It's being tried out in some of the smaller counties. I think the biggest county might be Will right now doing it. They're trying to work the kinks out of the system, figure out what rules, what works and doesn't work for the Illinois courtroom. But once that technology gets approved statewide and once our circuit joins it, I'll be all for it. Because one of the things it's going to do, putting audio and video in the courtroom, it's going to improve transparency. People are going to be able to see what's going on in the major cases, and that's going to be great. I mean, I don't have to, we all know we live in Illinois. We live in a place that government's not really been transparent, but once we get cameras in the courtroom, at least the judicial function of the Illinois government will be open and out there for everyone to see, and that's great. Transparency is what people want.
Mr. Reimers, same question.
Okay, Deborah, almost 24 counties in Illinois now allow cameras and tape recorders in their courtrooms. How do you feel about the issue for Effingham County?
My opinion is that the cameras and the audio visual in the courtroom really won't be anything different to us as practicing attorneys. We already are recorded. Every move that we make is recorded. So it's nothing different to me, but what it does seem to do is provide some transparency, and it also provides communication for the public so that you can know what's going on. Right now the courtrooms are open, so you can always attend whenever you want. We sometimes do have visitors in the courtroom. But other than that, there's really not an opportunity unless you physically go there. So with the audio visual, it will give you an opportunity to know what's going on in the courtroom. So I have no problem with that, and I would support that.
Any need for a rebuttal?
I don't think there's a need for rebuttal. It's another issue I believe Ms. Reimers and I completely agree on. It's going to be good for the taxpayer, good for the people, and we're all for it.
Move to the next question.
The next question, I think this will be yours.
Deb,
yes.
first.
Effective January 1st, a parent or guardian who knowingly authorizes or permits underage drinking on their property is guilty of a Class A misdemeanor. If such offenses occurred in Effingham County, how will you deal with them?
Well, in my opinion, the juvenile system, basically as it's set up, one of the primary functions of a parent is to provide a good role model for your kids. We have a juvenile system, but obviously that always starts at home. So my intention would be that if there's a problem with that, we need to work on that and make some improvements and prosecute those people. You can't have juveniles out running around drinking alcohol. It causes all kinds of problems and it's dangerous and people get killed doing that. So if parents allow their kids to do that, some parents promote their kids doing that, and I really have a problem with that. We're big supporters of 180 and we support healthy youth lifestyles, and I believe that needs to start in the home, and I would strongly support that in the state's attorney's office.
I agree mostly with what Ms. Reimers said. It has been a problem locally with underage drinking. And in the part of the juvenile process, I really have been a big proponent of at least taking kids that get caught with drinking offenses and putting them into different type of diversion programs like the current Crossroads program we have or the alternative routes program we have in probation. So as state's attorney, I will use these diversionary mechanisms to really bring home the fact that underage drinking is a problem here in Effingham. But getting back to your specific question about the particular parents, I'm not going to make some blanket rule that if a parent gets caught doing this at home, that it's necessarily always going to be prosecuted. What we've got to remember is every case is kind of like a snowflake. There are no two fact patterns that are alike. So a lot, Mr. Meeker, is going to depend on what really happened. If it's, if the parents are supplying booze to a big party, yes, that'll be prosecuted. But if it's something privately going on in the house between just the parents and responsible adults, I might not be inclined.
Ms. Reimers, any response?
I think we're in agreement, so I don't think I need a rebuttal on that.
Okay. Mr. Sapp, Mr. Kibler will answer first.
Very good, thank you. Do you plan to continue the use of drug court as a form of prosecution?
Oh, absolutely. I think the drug court program, which I don't know if the state's attorney really has much say in it, because the state Supreme Court and the General Assembly has been pretty adequate that we're going to do programs like drug court. We instituted this drug court program several years ago, and it's been fantastic. What it does is it has people who are first-time offenses with felony levels of drugs on them, who have some sort of substance abuse problem. It lets them go through this really intense program where if they stay clean for 2 years, do everything required of them, that goes off the record. So it's a fantastic tool. It's essentially an intense probation period, which has quite frankly worked well because it's so expensive to incarcerate people. I mean, the state's broke. So I support these measures that are used to really give people one last chance to clean up. And it's been successful. And I know several people who've gone through it. I've had clients go through it, and they've all turned out well. They all, once they pass this program, most of them, the recidivism rate is well below.
Very good. Deb, the question again is, do you plan to continue the use of drug court?
Yes, I do. In fact, I plan on becoming integrally, really importantly involved in that right now. The drug court program really works because all the parties who are involved in the process, the probation officer, the state's attorney, the criminal defense attorney, as well as the drug court judge, get together and they talk about these cases with the benefit of the participants in mind. I've actually represented several clients that have gone through the drug court program, one of whom really made it, and in fact she's out speaking, public speaking about her experience today, and she is on the drug court board. I've had a couple of people that didn't make it through the drug court program. It's really tough, it takes a lot of dedication, and it only works because all the parties work together. So the state's attorney needs to be very involved in the drug court program, and I very highly support it.
Mr. Kibler, any?
One thing I'd also like to add, and this is just kind of an offshoot, but other counties have also done similar things for veterans. There are things up in Macon County. They got a program called Veterans Court, where what happens is a lot of times these soldiers come back, the post-traumatic stress, impacts them negatively. They go out and start having criminal problems. But I'd also maybe be interested, and this is something that has to be run through the chief judge and the county board, but maybe also looking at a similar program to drug court, which would be a veterans type court. I think that would also be a benefit to this county.
And in regard to the Veterans Court program, I strongly support that. In fact, I had a client just this last year that was accused of a Class X felony, and the reason was because he was overseas and had traumatic brain injury, and he actually used medical marijuana. So we have some problems there, with the veterans, and we didn't have the Veterans Court here available in Effingham County, so consequently he's in prison right now. I think there's a lot better alternatives for these folks, and I would support starting the veteran program.
Thank you. Mr. Kirk. To Ms. Reimers.
Okay. How do you plan to handle juvenile cases?
I was actually the Effingham County juvenile attorney in 2005 through 2008. So I've handled hundreds of juvenile cases. I'm very familiar with the issues surrounding juvenile cases as well as their families. We have a problem with at-risk youth in Effingham County. However, we also have several services for at-risk youth right now. We have church groups like 180, we have mentoring programs, we have the CASA program, we have school resource officers, and actually the state's attorney acts as a hub in the wheel of all those youth services. So in the state's attorney's office, my position would be to take a more active part in getting these services more working collaboratively so that we can redirect the activities of our at-risk youth. So I intend to make juvenile cases a priority in Effingham County.
As state's attorney, one of the big proponents that I would be for is the increasing of these diversionary programs such as, that I mentioned earlier, alternate routes, the Something for Nothing program, programs like that that really do a good job of picking out kids that are starting to go off the rails, and it gets them immediately into some kind of program where they can get help, where they can start being monitored by probation. What was going on for years, we didn't really have these type of programs, so all kids were just lumped into the same juvenile justice system. So you'd go to court and there'd be a kid there with a Class C disorderly conduct misdemeanor charge as a juvenile, then a kid with a more serious theft thing. And what it ended up doing was clogging up the court system to where probation and the state's attorney's office couldn't really focus on those kids that were completely off the rails, that were completely being a menace. And so what we did was we created these diversionary programs which are taking care of some of the kids that aren't quite the problem, that they essentially allow then the probation, the state's attorney's office to really focus on those kids that need intensive supervision and scrutiny.
Again, just to add my emphasis again with the youth and the juvenile programs is that this begins at home. So the programs and the services that we have available in Effingham County just need to be integrated. And really the main reason is so that, God forbid, we don't miss kids. We need to take care of our kids. Our youth are our main, they're our future. So we have to take care of our kids. They're our valuable resource and they're our future.
And I'll echo Ms. Reimers' statement. I mean, if we don't catch these kids that are really at risk, that are really struggling, we're not only failing the kids, we're failing the community as a large. If we can get to some of these kids through intensive probation programs, the other one I missed was the redeploy probation program, which is really a helpful tool, really lets probation really set strict limits on these kids. Because if you can save these kids now, the amount of taxpayer money you can save in the future from having to incarcerate them would just be enormous, and plus it would make the community safer.
All right, how aggressive will you be in pursuing truancy cases?
I'll be aggressive in pursuing truancy. One of the, we have several cases right now in the juvenile system where the state is currently prosecuting the parents for truancy. I believe that's one of the major things that we need to start doing. I was reading yesterday that there was a case out of California where a woman was sentenced to jail for 180 days because she let her kids miss over 100 days of school. I fully support that. Truancy, not sending your kids to school, is punishable by up to a year in jail. And that if that is a tool that we need to use, then I'm going to use it. Because what happens is some of these kids, they're unsupervised, they don't go to school, so there's no one watching them. And obviously, if you're a parent who won't send your kid to school, then are you really going to watch them when they're roaming around town? So this truancy thing, by prosecuting and going after the parents, I think what you're going to do is make the community safer because you're going to send a message that you got to send your kids to school. And if you don't, there's going to be a punishment for it. So I think as a tool.
How aggressive will you be in pursuing truancy cases?
Again, in my experience as the Effingham County juvenile attorney, I represented several of the juveniles that did have truancy issues, and I can tell you that is not most of the time the kid's fault. That starts all the way at home, and it is the parents that we need to talk to. So again, truancy needs to be aggressively pursued. Those kids run free, and most of the time they don't have parental supervision, and then we have at-risk behaviors and criminal behaviors as a result. Because the parent is being irresponsible, the child is the one who is actually injured. So truancy needs to be addressed, and there's lots of resources that we can use to address that. And again, if we could get the agencies and the services that we have available to work more collaboratively on these, we can keep these kids in school where they belong.
Anything to add, Mr. Kibler?
There's nothing to add. I think we both strongly believe that truancy is a problem with some kids, and I think as either of us elected, we will make sure that we clamp down hard on parents that don't send their kids to school.
Good.
All right, with the last question for this page, as we're going to our bonus, we'll be going to our bonus round here. We'll be going to our bonus round.
Love that.
So hold your bets. Okay. How accessible do you plan to make yourself to members of the general public?
Who's first on that one? This is me. In the state's attorney's office, that position is an elected position, so I firmly believe that person needs to be very held accountable to the citizens of Effingham County. So I will be available to the citizens of Effingham County to listen to their concerns and address their concerns. I will be available to the media to provide communication on what's going on in the cases and yet still retain the integrity of the cases so we can have good, strong prosecutions. I also believe that we have a lot of farm families in Effingham County. We live in a rural area, and I'll be available to listen to and address their concerns of all the families living in the outside and outlying areas. So my intention is to be in the courtroom every day, in the office every day, and I will be available and willing to listen to and address their concerns. That's the job.
One of the things that I would do as state's attorney, I would increase kind of the electronic web presence of the office. There are several state's attorney's offices around the nation that have websites where people can go to and they can get the latest press releases from the state's attorney's office. You can go there and essentially be linked into where, you know, the local sex offender registry. You can also maybe get information on outstanding fugitives, the people that local law enforcement want. So those are tools that I would try to implement as state's attorney. Another thing I will do is maybe come up with more of an electronic kind of subscription page. So when my office sends out a mass email, people in the community can subscribe to it, and they would get all the information that the media gets. One of the things I'm having trouble seeing the timesheet. Okay. So that's what I would do as state's attorney, be more directly involved with the people, because quite frankly, as electronic technology has improved, people, especially the younger generations, want their public officials to directly communicate with them.
Anything to add?
I just want to add that to me is one of the most important jobs of the state's attorney. The state's attorney's office is here to help protect our citizens and keep our families safe. And the only way that you can know what's going on is through communication and availability. The office needs to be transparent, and I will be there every day, and I will be willing to listen to and address concerns immediately.
And going back to this point, I mean, before I got cut off the last time with time, I think the people are demanding that their public officials communicate directly with them, and that is something that any elected state's attorney should be able to do. It's one of those things where unfortunately I got a media panel, but public officials are starting to learn how to bypass you guys and get their message out there quickly and more efficiently. And so as technology improves, people are going to demand it, and as state's attorney, I'll make sure that people have direct access to me. Thank you.
That will be our last question of the day. We'll move into closing statements now. I believe Deb will go first.
Well, the main reason for these forums is so that you can get to know your candidates. So I'm going to tell you my story. My dad is a World War II vet, and he served in Europe driving a Sherman tank into Germany. He also served in the Korean War. And when he got back, he opened Niebrugge Lumber Company, which is still owned and operated by my family today in Diederich, Illinois. My mom is Margaret Niebrugge, and she was a school teacher. She's retired now. She taught schools in St. Anthony, Edgewood, and T-Town Unit 40 schools. And actually, tomorrow night, she's receiving an award for having provided all her years of 45 years, actually it's 54 years of her time and talent to the St. Anthony schools and the churches. But I don't rest on the laurels of my parents. I went back to school and earned my master's in business administration while I was working full-time and raising my kids. At age 42, I decided to go to law school. I don't know why I did that, but I did. I drove from Effingham to Carbondale every day because my kids were here in the Effingham schools. I worked part-time at the state's attorney's office while I was doing that, and I was sworn in 2005. And since that time, I served as the Effingham County Juvenile Attorney. I've served as a conflicts public defender, and I've served over 2,000 clients since that time in a very successful law practice. I believe that the state's attorney needs to be a hardworking position and needs to be available and in the courtroom and in the office and available to listen to the public every day. I have a proven track record in management and experience. I have a proven track record in being available to communicate, and I intend on working hard for you. I will be in the courtroom every single day, and I will be there working hard for you. Thank you.
Again, thank you to the Chamber for putting on this nice event. Thank you for all you people for coming out to hear what Ms. Reimers and I have to say about these things. And I know Deb and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. But as I've been campaigning for state's attorney, the number one question I get asked by people is, Bryan, why do you want to do it? This job is hard, this job is demanding, and this job is some days impossible. And my response has always been, that's exactly why I'm doing this. This job is an important task. I mean, you could argue that the Office of State's Attorney is maybe the most difficult and maybe the most important county office in Effingham County. And that's why I'm running. I love this place. I mean, I grew up here. I kind of have a Mayberry version of Effingham that maybe some others don't share. But from this place, I was nurtured. It was a great place to live. It was a safe place to live. It was a fun place to live. And now, I kind of see it as I get older. It's kind of like my duty, my responsibility to put myself up for a very important office. I love this place. And as state's attorney, I want to make this place even better and even safer to live at. I want to make this place just as good as it was for me, for my own kids, so they have the same wonderful childhood I had, and that's why I'm running. Because as state's attorney, your primary job is to make sure that this community stays safe, and as state's attorney, it's your job to make sure that the bad guy stays off the street. And I am the only candidate for state's attorney who has at least legitimate jury trial experience, and I am the only candidate for state's attorney who spent the majority part of his career every day in the criminal courtroom fighting, kind of in the trenches. I mean, the criminal law process is not pretty. It's kind of akin to like a butcher shop. There's a lot of nasty things that happen, and sometimes isn't pleasant. But I've been the only candidate in there every day, fighting there. And if elected state's attorney, I'll be ready day one to get in the trenches, work hard to make this community safe. And again, I appreciate your time. Thank you, guys.
Well, that will wrap it up. Big round of applause for the candidates and the media panel today.